host, Bruce Posner.
Oh, the times they could be changing. What do you think, Wayne?
I think we probably should bring in Mr. Dillon himself. That's pretty good, Bruce. But yeah, the times could be changing.
This is Bruce Posner. You know, you know, your regular listeners out there, your Maryland listeners, you're there. We love you. We appreciate you. Here on Kelly and Associates Insurance Group TerpTalk every Saturday morning, going on our second year. I had a conversation yesterday with the new SID for Maryland Sports Information Director, Zach Bolno. And I said, Zach, I've got to send my thanks out to everybody in Maryland. So he said, why is that? I said, because you guys just give me info, you just give me things that are happening every week that draw the audience in. And I know today the topic, okay, without question, is the Big Ten. But first, let's do a few minutes on the basketball game last night. 91-74. We both commented when we saw each other before we did the post-game show. The post-game show will be after every home game, maybe a couple of the road games that we go to, but after every home game for Maryland basketball. It is on TerpTalk.com. It's also on YouTube. And we thank our sponsor for it for the time being, and that's Viener Consulting and Wayne for supporting the efforts that go into this show, and our film producer, the little Steven Spielberg himself, Mason Viener. So he did a great job last night. So anyway, 91-74, Alex Lynn was great, but last night we saw the blossoming and why Turgeon's first commitment was the young man Seth Allen. 5 threes. That's 5, count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 threes that literally put this game away over a very stubborn and a very good Long Island University Brooklyn team. Wayne, what did you think of Seth last night?
Well, you certainly could see why he was on the top of Mark's recruiting list when he was at Texas A&M, and you're right, he was the first recruit. He had some wrist problems as a senior, so he comes a little bit under the radar. And my goodness, that guy could shoot and he could play a little point guard. He finished off those 5 threes, and then he had a nice dunk to finish that off on the fast break. He looks like the real deal. What do you think?
Well, right now, as a freshman, to be able to nail those shots, of course, Pishon, I thought that his second half last night was the old Pishon, that he was back. 13 assists and 1 turnover. You know what that spells? That spells victory. 13 assists and 1 turnover. And I think he had 7 points. Forget the scoring. The fact that he handled the ball, had but 1 turnover, he was stupendous last night. And, you know, that goes under the radar when he doesn't score a lot.
Well, he was averaging a point a game, but when you tear your ACL, usually they say it takes at least a year, maybe even 1 more season after that, to be back to the way that you were playing before. He only played half a year last year, and he didn't play all the time as a freshman, so we really don't have that much background on what he looks like as a Terps point guard. 32 minutes last night, I think that's the most he played all year, and in the second half, he was feeding people for dunks, he was getting to the basket, and he started to look quick again.
12,800 were in attendance. Now, why is that a story? On Monday night after the game, Turgeon went into I guess as much as a tirade he would go into in public, but he was upset about the fact there were no students there. He was upset about the attendance, and I don't know if they responded because of him or because it was a Friday night, but maybe the students, I know the Diamondback writer wrote a little bit about it and spoke about Turgeon being in complaint about it, but
and it made the Washington papers.
The 12-8. Oh, the article about Turgeon, yeah.
So are you disappointed? I know you go to every game. You've been going for years.
Right.
It bothers me when I walk in there and there's nobody there.
Listen, you can't make people go to a game. Yes, all right? It has to be a good program, a winning program, a good opponent. You have to have all those things in unison. All right, in unison to make things work.
But they sell the tickets. I think it's a big shame. I guess it's good that we sell tickets. They can announce a sellout, but I'd really like the people to show up. You're right, it doesn't help that we don't really
Well, look, if you buy a ticket to the game, if you buy season tickets, and a lot of people do, they don't go to anything but the ACC games. And now, is that right or wrong? I don't know what it is, but that's their right.
It is. It just bothers me. I'm not here to argue economics, although it's great that we sell all the tickets. I just wish that that building felt, well,
I felt it last night.
Last night it was pretty good. And
yeah.
maybe if we keep winning, and I keep mentioning that early in January, the first ACC home game is Virginia Tech. We should be 11-1. I think if we get to 8 or 9-1, those last couple of games to get to 11-1 before the ACC, maybe we can get the place packed again.
All right, a few more things, then we're going to get to the Big Ten a little bit. Des Wells was told by Coach Turgeon to relax, stop putting pressure on himself, and thus, I thought he played his best game so far. He looked like the Des Wells that we were looking forward to. 28 assists for the Terps last night. Of course, Jake Lehman started for Nick in the second half. Turgeon was a little upset that Nick was a little bit out of control last night. He made a statement afterwards that Nick's got to play better for us to really win at a top level. Nick was out of control. Some flies, he tried some dunks, he tried some things that weren't Faust-like, and he paid for it by sitting on the bench a little bit.
He looks like he feels pressure to be spectacular. And I guess we'd settle for just being really good and solid.
It's very tough to come off of the way he played last year. Do you know that he was playing 35 minutes a game last year? And he's not going to see 35 minutes this year.
And he was the man.
Right, and he didn't do anything wrong last year.
No.
But Turgeon let him run free, and he says he can't do that anymore. The team's too good. There's too much backup. Lehman can come in and kind of fill the role, although Lehman's got a long way to go. One thing Lehman has is a sweet stroke, I'll tell you that much. The Terps' next opponent Tuesday night is Lafayette. Now, Lafayette played Kentucky last night. Did you hear about the score?
No, but I think you're going to tell me what happened over
101-49. All right, so...
Well, I remember when we used to have games like that back with Stevie Francis and the guys.
It could happen on Tuesday night.
But not before we move too much further. Alex Len looks like a professional center.
Yeah, how about when he went on that defensive tear early when he was chasing somebody out front, hitting the floor? He is just turned, you know, how's a guy who's 7'2" grow up? He grows up by gaining, 40 pounds and all kinds of muscle. That's how he grew up. And now he's turning into what I believe is a number 1 to 5, well, maybe number 1 to 5 pick in the NBA draft.
Sure, and the way he shoots his free throws, the motion, the spin on the ball, that guy can really shoot the basketball.
All right, rumors abound on the Terps' entrance into the Big Ten. The deal might be close, very close. Last night, that's all everybody was talking about was the entrance to the Big Ten. I have a good friend of mine who has been on the shows with me a lot and wanted to come in this morning to comment on his take on some of this. And we're going to have a good discussion on this. That's my friend Rob Schwartzman. Rob, welcome in this morning. Thanks for getting up early. Wayne Viner's in the house today, Rob, and he knows you're a lacrosse guy. Today we're talking about the entrance to the Big Ten. Let me go over some of the things that I call pros and cons, all right? And you're welcome to comment on everything I say. Number one, supposedly $90 to $100 million would be in the pot for Maryland, which would leave Maryland $70 to $80 million after paying the buyout. All I can say to that is, wow, fiscally, it's almost, if that's the truth, if that's the case, it's almost impossible not to take through these real quick. Number one, you'd have a tremendous upgrade in football. There's no comparison, and the quality of football opponents. Tremendous revenue from the Big Ten network. There's no question. The ACC coverage palls in relation to the Big Ten. You have an immediate rivalry with Penn State in football that would overcome any rivalry that we lose. You have new regular opponents that could be Michigan State, IU, and Michigan in basketball. You have tremendous local following of these schools that would immediately boost attendance at Byrd Stadium or Capital One Field. You'd have a breakaway from the malaise of playing the same opponents in the ACC that are virtually meaningless, except for Duke and Carolina. You'd have a new tremendous women's lacrosse rivalry with Northwestern. You'd have reasons to go to the Big House to go to Michigan. But here's the bottom line: $70 to $80 million. This is not a discussion. If Kevin Anderson can pull this off, it's just, that's it for Duke, that's it for Carolina. No doubt lacrosse, men's lacrosse would take a hurt in some regards and probably be blackballed by the ACC teams. But you know what? The fiscal stability. You know, people forget, and it's just happened, we lost 8 teams because of fiscal problems. 8 teams of student athletes had to be told by Kevin Anderson that it would be no more. And I knew that day when I saw Kevin Anderson, after he had done this, he was almost in tears, literally. And he almost, I can't say it, but I think he made a personal vow that this is not going to happen. That's his job. His job is the financial stability of the program. I left out one thing. We no longer have to accept the premise that Greensboro Coliseum is a neutral venue, all right, for the ACC tournament. Chicago.
Well, every once in a while they roll that out to Indianapolis as well, but
yeah, but it could wind up occasionally at Verizon, just like the. You know, first of all, that's really in the future.
You know, that's a good point because they want East Coast exposure. So I think you might see some of the events show up closer to here. The only thing that really bothers me about this move is I don't think Duke or Carolina or anybody's ever going to play us again unless they have to in the NCAA tournament.
Well, you might be right. I mean, that could happen. But who, you know, first of all, Duke is being dropped to one time a year once this thing goes through. So it's not going to be home and home. And it's one stinking game that the whole program cannot revolve around a basketball game against Duke and Carolina, in my opinion. I mean, that's not what the whole program's about. There's 19 sports, there's many teams, and the only, one basketball game against Duke every year. I do believe that with the Big Ten, if it happens. But everything I'm saying means nothing because this university needs this revenue for the athletic department. And well, Turgeon said yesterday in the press conference, which is probably what we're referring to, that I said, or somebody asked him, can you give 10 men equal minutes? Can you give 10 men, can you keep them happy on this team? And his answer was no. And it seems to me, Wayne, that you're talking an 8.5 man rotation. So who is out of that rotation? Is that what you're asking? In my opinion? Well, it's too early to tell when he's testing everybody, but if you look at the minutes last night, you see 5 minutes for Logan Ehrenholt, and I think that everybody else, I think it could be a game-to-game kind of situation, Wayne, where, like, if we're playing a game where we need the bigs, you might find that Mitchell and Clear might get the big minutes, but if we're playing a game like last night, where he went with 4 guards to win the game, that could change quickly. And, of course, injuries will play a role.
Sure. I think that right now it looks like Mitchell's ahead of Clear in the rotation. So if you have to cut it down to 8, you have your 5 starters. And that's saying that Pichon, is back at the starter level. So you're probably going to see Charles Mitchell, Seth Allen, and Lehman get most of the minutes, and Clear would come in if we needed him.
Yeah, well, I think I'd go with the 8.5 rule, where it might be Clear one day, and it could be that maybe Lehman's in a shooting slump. You don't know what could happen, but I do believe that as the season goes on, you just look at the minutes, and it's funny. The guy who's been getting the least amount of minutes as a starter has been Padgett, and I think that Padgett's playing his best ball that he's played, without question, in the past 3 or 4 games.
Well, he has a different game than the other guys. He has all those old school moves around the basket and certainly gets the opposition in foul trouble.
All right, we got to go to a break. Thanks for the call, Ronnie. All right, I'll see you at the game. All right, this is Bruce Posner with Wayne Viener, and you're listening to Kelly & Associates Insurance Group TerpTalk. We're going to have Keith Cavanaugh on after the break to get us even more up to date with the Big Ten situation and all things that are Maryland sports. This is Kelly Associates Insurance Group TerpTalk here on 1580 gov.biz radio. Be back in just a few minutes.